Alright guys, welcome to part 7 of my Furioso Dreadnought painting tutorial, and I decided to do things a little bit differently this time. I've in advance painted the majority of the Dreadnought, edge highlighting, that is, because it's what this tutorial is about. I've done it in advance so you can sort of see the effect we're going for. Let's get that a bit closer. Now, I spent a little extra time around the plate, well, this blue area, as you can see, to make it more in line with the box art. So the edge highlights there, they've got numerous colours. It's not just one colour. It's about 4 different shades of blue going up to white on the highlights there, because that's the main focal point of the model. I really wanted that to look good, but it took a while, and it was hard to, it would have been hard to do in front of a camera anyway, so I wasn't going to record that. But the red, as you can see on this arm and on the top, that's more in line with what I usually do, which is just two colours. So it'd be a case of edge highlighting one colour to make the edges pop, and then on the corners highlight the corners with like a brighter colour, and that really makes each individual sort of plate, and these sort of Space Marine models that are really sort of like hard edged, they really stand out when you do this kind of edge highlighting. But again, it's just one of those things that if you really want something to look really good, you can just keep pushing it. You can add more colours, and add more variation across the entire length of an edge rather than just one colour, or just don't do it at all. It depends on the kind of end result and how much time you've got and how much skill you have with a paintbrush. So I've done most of the model. I've also done the metallic areas in the same way, although it's hard to see. But basically I went back over it in a gunmetal colour along the edges, because the metal was all dull like it is here, because as I said, I was going to apply the black wash over all the metal in the meantime, which I've done. So that's kind of how it came out. But then everywhere else on the model, I've added on, you can see it's much shinier, I've added on the gunmetal highlight, and then used like a steel colour. In fact, the colours I used were the Valero Model Air gun, or just bulk gunmetal, and the Valero Model Air aluminium, because these metallics, they're pre-finned because they're made for an airbrush, so they're really good, easy to work with, just straight from the pot basically. But it's hard to tell, but I've basically done the same thing on the metals as I did with the blue and the red, where I've sort of gone for highlighting the edge and then highlighting the corners. Although on the metal, it was a bit rougher, and there was kind of a bit of a almost like dry brushing in places, more like over brushing, because it's a metal colour. It's like it can be a bit messier, and I'll probably end up weathering the metal a bit as well with some potentially rust pigments, I'm not sure yet. So but yeah, so for this tutorial we're gonna do this red plate up here, because you can see I haven't actually done this one. I left that just for this tutorial, so let's get cracking. I'm just gonna pull the arm off so it's easier for me to get in there. And the colours we want, well, I was just using the same bloody red colour, but I was mixing it 1-to-1 with this nice gold yellow Valero model colour, game colour, sorry. The only reason I haven't just used it like an orange colour is actually I just don't have one. I know GW do like a fiery orange or something like that, which would have been perfect as a highlight colour, or at least the first highlight colour. So we're going to do 1-to-1 with this, and then once this is done, take that away and just do straight gold yellow on the corners. So let me just get this in my palette. So the technique with edge highlighting is to try and use the edge of your brush as much as possible. It makes it a lot easier, and it gives you a lot more control over painting the line. If you're trying to use the tip of a brush to paint an edge highlight, the tip of the brush might wobble, and it's going to make your line go all over the place, and it's going to be hard to keep it on edge. Whereas if you use the edge of your brush, that's a different story, because you can sort of, if you imagine that's the edge and your brush is sitting on it, you can go up and down all over the place, but the brush is still only going to be touching the edge at this sort of point where you want the edge to be. That kind of, I don't know if that makes any sense, but we'll just do it and you'll see. Just need to add a tiny bit more yellow to this. It's a bit red, a bit too red. There we go. So, when you also you want to thin these paints as well. You want your brush to not be loaded with paint. You just want to have it looking a little bit damp. So the best way to do this is to angle your model so the edge is there. Get your brush on and just gently back and forward motions, bringing your brush a bit closer, and just see how it's having an effect. You don't have to push too hard. And it's a case of going over the edge like this, and because the paint's thin, it's not going to be the full strength colour. That's fine, it will dry really quick, and then so you can usually just bomb ahead and go all over the show, highlighting these edges. Another trick you can do if you don't even want to save time, don't bother highlighting edges that are facing downwards, because they wouldn't be catching the light anyway. But I've decided to do it on account that it's quite easy to do on this model. Oops, there you can see. So that's it really. You just thin paint, wipe most of it off on a paper towel, and try and use the edge of the brush. If you can't use the edge of your brush, that's a different story. That's when you've got to be really careful. Like around here, I don't want to start brushing from there. I want to just use the tip. But as a result of using just the tip, if you push too far towards the edge, you'll end up going over the edge and then onto the main body of the paintwork, which isn't that big a deal. As I said, I've got numerous layers of varnish on this red coat by now, so any places where I make a mistake, I can just scratch off. And in fact, I was doing that quite a bit on the blue areas, because I would paint the highlights how I wanted them with the colours, but they were a bit too thick in places. But because of all the layers of varnish, I just scratched off the excess paint until I got the nice thin highlight I wanted. So another good tip for using varnishes. Here's an edge, nice big one here. I didn't do. Edge of your brush, just sort of go back and forth until you're happy with it, and then come back to your edges you've done before and just go over the top of them to make sure that the colour that's on that edge is definitely uniform. It's like that is the colour highlight, and then that way you just do that on all the edges, and then all the edges will have this nice uniform colour. And then when you do the corners, if you want to do the corners, if you want to do an extra layer of highlight on these edges and make them really pop, it's going to look good because you've got the nice uniform base colours to work with. Sometimes you can cheat as well. You just you don't have to do this on every edge. Do this on the important edges. Do it on the ones that people are going to notice, like on the Space Marines. Do the edge highlights on the helmet, the top of the backpack, and the shoulder pads, and that's it really. You don't really have to concentrate too much on the others, because people aren't going to be focusing on those areas. It just depends on the kind of time you want. So, nearly running out of time. The top parts. This is where I'm going to have to use the top of the brush. But the best thing to do is to just make sure you've got a really good grip on your model. It's resting against the surface of the table. You've got your hand resting against something. You just want to be as completely stable as possible, and just go really slow. And you can do this with multiple coats. Go back over it and really, because of the thin paint, you can just, if you make a mistake and you don't go too close to the edge, or you make it too big, that's fine, because it's going to be quite subtle anyway. it's only going to really start being out of place and having when you've put a couple of layers of this orange sort of highlight colour before it becomes too bright. See if I can just quickly do this, then we'll do the corners. But essentially this is the technique, and I've just applied it to everything. Still got a few areas to do, like I've got to do the black, the little bit of black area that's on the model, and all the other red panels, and the metal that I didn't do before, just so I could show you what it looked like. There we go. Sorry, it's very, very subtle, so you need to either go back on it, just brighten it up that tiny bit more, and when we do the corners, that should really make these panels pop. But it depends, really depends how much effort and how much time you've got, or whether you want to be doing edge highlights at all. You can keep pushing it and do more and more highlight colours, brighter and brighter. But I don't want to go too bright on the red, because I don't want it to end up looking orange, which could be, if you go too much, it might end up looking orange. So I'll just quickly do the next one. So this is just a straight gold yellow game colour. Again, you want to thin this slightly. And then this is just going on those edges right by the corners, or just literally put a dot by the corners themselves. But it usually looks a bit better if you do a bit of the edge as well. So for example, this corner edge here, you do the same technique, just draw in the paint, and this might take a few more layers before it becomes obvious, because it's a yellow paint, and yellow doesn't like to go on too well. It's one of the more transparent ones. You see what I did there as well, I just made a little mistake, and whilst the paint was still wet I just wiped it with my finger before it dried. There we go. You should be able to see that. And if I've gone too heavy, I'll just, I'll turn it down with a cocktail stick. I'll just scratch it off a bit. But again, you can get, don't go too overboard with this. But it does add a nice effect. See, I'm just putting a dot in the corners there. So I'm brushing this a bit on this side, so I'll probably clean this up a bit off camera afterwards. But yeah, this is the general idea. If you want your edge highlights to just be that a little bit better, highlight the corners a bit brighter than the rest of the edge. So yeah, and then you'll end up looking like it does on this side. Or a good example is the feet. You can see that each individual foot has got that little extra highlight on the edge, and it really makes it stand out. And then obviously, I've gone a lot more detailed on the sarcophagus. If it would focus. There you go. There's 4 colours leading up to white on there, just so it basically looks kind of how it looks on the box art. So yeah, if you next time I'll be doing possibly the power sword. But yeah, if you like these kind of videos, don't forget to subscribe. Comments, questions and advice for me be really appreciated, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy, guys.